something about what was going on the top floor then, right?
Yeah, well, what happened is I'm with office services. And of course, I like this because it's within walking distance. I don't have to get on a bus and go out to Gravelly Point anymore. Um, and the war obviously is winding down. And I don't take any summer courses for some reason or other. And by then the chief draftsman over at Chuck Goodman's has talked me into applying to Catholic University, which I have done. And I guess by this summer I knew that I had been accepted. And that they were sending me in as a sophomore for, they looked at my GW grades and ground them up. I don't know, it was 1.5 or 2 years. I got 1 year's credit going out to
No,
Catholic.
was it after you finished at Catholic University that you ran into Carl? I don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was long.
That's to come. That's in the
That's
future.
to come. But anyhow, to go up and just to arrange things on the top floor in the Manhattan district, you have to have a top secret security clearance. Well, because I had been doing these airplane routes and things like that, and particularly for the hump, they had given me a top secret security clearance. So that is why I was the only one who could go up there.
Wow.
And that was kind of interesting. Now that is part of the State Department.
Now, is that the same Manhattan project that they were working on, or is
Yeah.
that related? So it's all related to the same project. At one time, I remember reading
That's it.
right the whole how many people were involved in that, and the numbers were staggering.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they mentioned me.
No, but I'm just saying, as far as the total number of people involved, I was amazed the first time I saw how many actual people
Yeah.
had some capacity or other in that.
Yeah,
because
but they had them out in the desert.
Oh,
and
sure,
everything.
right.
Yeah, and that sort of thing. I didn't have a clue.
What they were doing.
Yeah, I did not know or have a clue. All I knew is that it was top secret.
Sure, right.
And so I couldn't tell anybody anything because I didn't know anything. But all I know is I was doing the as-built so they could take these temporary buildings that were behind, and the State Department eventually gobbled up. I was in the one building that was a permanent
Wow, that's
building,
interesting.
which still exists. But that was an interesting experience. The one after VJ Day, then is when I went to Catholic University, and we had no problem. There were 5 of us there, 5 women, and I do remember asking Dr. Murphy, "What made you choose the 5 of us? We are so different." We had a cute little girl from Cuba, Esther Abillon, and Margaret Tucker from Virginia, who had come from Mary Washington. Why she didn't come in as a sophomore, I don't know. She had been a phys ed major, you know. And because she had some phys ed credits and everything, they didn't know what to do about the swimming facilities, because I guess the men swam in the nude, but 2 or 3 times a week they put aside a time that girls could go swimming, and they had a nice pool, and I did like to swim. So, but Margaret had to go with us because she had a couple of credits in
So she
phys ed,
overseeing it.
and anyhow.
Now, it seems to me, even in the 40s, it was unusual to have co-ed universities. I mean, to have both GW and Catholic University be co-ed is somewhat of an anomaly.
GW was always co-ed because my mother
Right, I remember you telling me
graduated
that.
from
Right.
there. One of the things is, after I met Carl, which was later, and he was still in college when I met him, going on the GI Bill. He finally, when we realized we were expecting Leella, he finally quit working and went to school full-time and finished up, which was for 1 semester. It paid, the GI Bill paid for all but 1 semester of his education.
That's wonderful.
And he graduated at the end of January. He is wearing a cap and gown, and it's kind of full. I am wearing some sort of a dark blue maternity outfit, which is kind of robish-like looking. We look like Tweedledee and Tweedledum. But my mother enjoyed Carl's graduation because all the people.
Oh, she knew a lot of the folks.
Yes, she knew. And they were deans and so forth
Sure,
now,
absolutely.
where they had been instructors. And I had Elmer Kaiser. That was not Margaret Truman's favorite. She liked the other guy. I thought the other guy was dull in comparison.
Now, when was Margaret Truman going to school there? I don't know.
At the time, Carl went there.
Okay.
This was later. This had to be around 48 or something.
So she enrolled when her father was in the White House to
Yes,
stay,
uh-huh.
basically, to commute from home?
Yeah. Well, she got driven, I can tell you that. Yeah, they had Secret Service with her. Just think, the Secret Service guy got to sit in class. They had some good instructors. I don't know whether Georgetown was all male. Maybe it was.
I don't know. I
It
mean,
was a
but
Jesuit college.
yeah, certainly, even in New England, many of the schools, it wasn't until the middle to late 70s that they were co-ed. So, I mean, it is, and it's just unbelievably impressive to me that not just yourself, but your mother had a college education, and she was there probably in the 20s or something, I'm trying to think.
She graduated in 1922, I
Yeah,
think.
so I mean, that's
21.
just amazing that she had the fortitude to finish up school. That's amazing.
Well, my grandfather thought she ought to.
Hmm.
She had gone to a woman's college first and didn't really do too well there. And I guess she wanted to live at home and go to GW. It was called Columbian College then. And then it became George Washington University. I
That's
don't
amazing.
know the specific history
Sure.
of that, but it was one relatively small building on the corner, and it's still standing. They don't tear it down because it's historical. But the university has gobbled up Foggy Bottom.
Oh, really? I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Oh, including where one of my best friends, Louise Hack, lived. They finally made an offer. At least her grandparents' house, which was a bakery, they still call that the Bender Building. It sort of still exists. It didn't get torn. Her house got
Sure.
torn down and they put a big building in. And GW is quite a good-sized campus now. American University was sort of a so-so college, but now it's very prestigious.
Right.
But it was always co-ed.
And now, when did Harvey start down there? When?
He must have started down there.
Well, he was in the war, so was it after the war? Or?
Oh yeah, it must have been the fall of '45 that he might have started there. I don't know for sure, but it was before Carl. Carl didn't come down there because he got, he was an anti-aircraft gunner, and then
And so-
he didn't have enough points to get out.
And
at
you said
VGA.
you were saying to me, yes, he got drafted in '43,
Yeah,
and so he was
January of
in, right, and, so,
'43.
and he was in for 3 years basically.
Yeah, and then in '45, after VJ Day, he got transferred to the being an MP and was stationed in Yokohama. And it was a woman's college, by the way, that
That he was.
the Army just took over
Right.
the whole college. And so he didn't get out until January or March, and he was, Fort Devon is that's where they took him in, and that's where they let him out. And of course his mother was thrilled to have him back.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and,
But he wasn't home for long, I take it, before he went.
no,
down.
because if he got out in '46, I guess it was, I don't know, it might have been, he had to go to Tilton for a year, so for the year '46, '47,
Sure.
he was at
He was
Tilton.
prepping
But
for
he'd gone to Worcester Boys Trade School, majored
Right.
in electrical, whatever, to be an electrician.
Sure.
And he needed English, so he took English and whatever else he needed for 1 year. He and Joe Logan went there together. I don't know why they chose Tilton. I guess because it wasn't too far away from Worcester, because they'd grown up together in Worcester.
Right.
And so that was, so he must not have gone down there until '47. And we didn't get married until 1952, because he was taking forever. Oh, he changed his major too, and you had to take tests to change your major. And business administration was one of them you could change to.
And how did you, the two of you happen to meet in Washington? I don't
We
know. if
worked
that's-
same drafting room.
Oh, you had told me that, right? That you were doing drawings or something.
Yeah, I was doing Southwest redevelopment.
Mhm.
And and that was a fun job because I had to go knock on doors, even the alley dwellings, and go look inside and see how well built they were.
Hmm.
And that's when I got to work for the most prestigious person I'd ever worked for. Chuck Goodman was prestigious, but Albert Peets was one of those that did he did Greendale. You've heard of Greendale, Greenbelt, and so there were 3 green communities,
Mhm.
and he did one of them.
Hmm.
And he was giving lectures at Yale,
Hmm.
so he was only working part-time, but he dry ran his lectures on me. And I thought that was great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I thought it was. And anyhow, we did a map of this development area, B we called it, of how good the things, you could have saved some of them, and he wanted to,
Mhm.
but that's not what they did. They just leveled everything.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, that was too bad. They called it progress or decay. It would have been a more interesting community had they left some of.
Sure.
They did leave the Law House because George Washington had given that
Oh, I see.
to a granddaughter, and Wheat Row they did, because that was well over 100 years old.
Hmm.
But you could count on one hand and have
Yeah,
a
the
finger
building.
left over of what they left.
Hmm.
They left the church, the Catholic Church. We didn't argue with them. In
Hmm.
fact, they drew the line right below the Catholic Church because they put a freeway through there, and it just misses the church.
Hmm.
And that was kind of interesting. Anyhow, I will have to tell you, when I asked Dr. Murphy about why in the world he took the
Oh,
5 of us in because we were so different, why, he said, we didn't know how to judge women, but we knew you needed math. And he said, you all had all the math you needed, which included trig, of course. In fact, if you didn't have trig before you went to CU, you had to take it in the summer before,
Hmm.
or you couldn't get in the School of Architecture. Anyhow, we had all the math and we had good math grades. And so that was the only common denominator
Hmm.
between the 5 of us. The other time, afterwards, when I ran away from home to Atlanta, Georgia, the other thing that was kind of interesting, I was working for Harold M. Heatley, and we were doing branch stores mostly for Macy's owned Davison's. We were working in the Davison-Paxson building. They called it Davison's then, but our paycheck said R.H. Macy. There were a couple of returning young people, and one of whom was John Portman, who was well known as the hotel
Mhm.
with the atrium sort of thing. But anyhow, he and Jimmy Rice and Bill Lathbury were taking course. Bill and John were at least taking courses, working their way through Georgia Tech, and they sort of teased me and challenged me. I guess they shouldn't have challenged me, but I knew that I had not really learned what you call heating, ventilation, air conditioning,
Mhm.
HVAC,
Sure.
we called it. And so I signed up for one of the courses. And this is in, because I go down there in the fall of '47. And when I register, it is for the spring semester, which is in early '48.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have to get this picture for you.
Hmm.
And then on the 31st of March, I get a note to come to the dean's office. And I thought, gee, what have I done to go to the dean's office? I had no idea. And we get there, and there are some other women, and the dean is sitting at a good, large, palatial desk and everything. And so they ask that we go behind the dean and pose, and there's this photographer. And they take a couple of 3 pictures or whatever with us behind, and the 5 of us had never seen, because we're each in different courses, I guess. And so the next morning it comes out on the front page of the second section. In other words, B1,
Sure.
not A1, but as a picture of us, and it says, "No, this is not an April Fool's joke."
Wow.
There really are 5 women at Georgia Tech.
Wow. So,
So
there hadn't been women before?
No.
Oh my God.
So I'm one of the first 5 women, and you're only allowed in night school. You can't go to day school. This is an experiment for them.
Wow.
Of course, that barrier has long since come
That's
down.
amazing.
But anyway, and I didn't know about it because I don't read the paper before going to work. I get to work, and Hal, who's my boss, comes in and says, "I see you've made the paper." And we laughed. I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, here's your picture." I said, then I said, "Oh, that's what they were doing." Because they didn't really explain it. They just
Sure.
took our pictures, and I had no reason. I didn't know why.
Absolutely.
No, they do introduce us to, he
Right.
meets and shakes our hand, and then he sits down and we stand up around him. But I didn't know. Anyhow, that was an interesting experience.
Now, how long were you in Atlanta?
I was in Atlanta for about 15 months because I have wonderful steps. My stepfather was great.
Mm-hmm.
He's Dan, and I think you've met Dan.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah, well, anyhow, the one thing, I have to go to Atlanta to stand on my own 2 feet, which I do, and get a job and so forth. I work on the Augusta store.
Mm-hmm.
The Augusta store gets an AIA award yet.
Oh, now that's wonderful.
Well, I tell you what it is. It's Hal Heatley's design,
Mhm.
because he puts the columns so that you go in the center of the store and you don't see any columns because they're off at the side, which is a trick that churches used
Mm-hmm.
with the side aisle and all that sort of stuff. Hal Heatley rightly gets the award, not me. I just do the drafting. And then I buy a car. And in Atlanta, after World War II, is all the young people from the small
Now,
towns in Georgia.
I'm curious how you learned to drive prior to that. I mean,
Oh, well, I have to tell you, yes, I have an uncle, in fact, the one that my father had been working for, who lost his shirt building the Kennedy Warren, by the way.
well, I remember you showed it to us when we drove by it,
Yeah.
because obviously Warren's on the front of the building.
Yeah, well, and it is a beautiful Art Deco building. Joe Younger gets the credit for it.
Is that by the zoo? Is
Yes,
that
Yes,
the building?
next
right
to
near
the
the
zoo.
zoo, right.
Okay.
Anyhow, they have lost their shirt doing that, but
So,
BF
because it was
saw.
before the Depression or during the Depression or...
1930 was
Right.
not the building
That's
time to build that building. It was in the depth of the Depression.
Sure.
But the Chevy Chase Land Company is good and gives them the land, and they don't have to pay for it until they've sold what they built on it.
Oh, I see.
It made it, they got their shirt back, let's put it that way. But anyway, the wife of Monroe Warren has, she's great at sitting on the sidelines and teaching you. And she is teaching me, and my father was the first one to try it while I'm down in Newport News, and only 15 at the time. He lifts up the hood and shows me and explains to me how the engine works. Goes in one ear and out the other, fast, I might add. However, he does lower it, and I'm driving around, and they have no hills in Newport News. So we have to go on the weekends on the ramps to the tobacco warehouses, because he's going to teach me, and these are in gear shift cars.
Sure, how to start and stop on a hill.
Yeah. And so that's my learning there. But in Virginia in those days, you learned courtesy is the first rule of the road. And once you've driven 200 miles with a licensed driver beside you, you get a permit. I didn't get my 200 miles down in Virginia because I moved back by then. by then, unfortunately, my mother has divorced Jerry Breckenridge, and we're getting I'm moving back to my grandmother's again, going to a different high school. But this aunt, they've done the street layout of what is now a very nice section of Chevy Chase called the Hamlet. It's diagonally opposite Columbia Country Club, whom he and others brought over from Petworth because it was a club that wanted to have a golf course and there wasn't enough room over there. Chevy Chase Land Company took care of that.
Sure.
And others, and so that was the beginning. Because to belong to the Chevy Chase Country Club, you either had to be a doctor or a lawyer. My Uncle Munn was a builder, not a doctor or a lawyer. And so the streets were laid out. Great place to teach a person to drive. So she is out there with her great big old Buick, and her son Tommy and I were learning how to drive. They take us over to get a permit, and unfortunately we drove around fine, no problem in the driving test, but not as many teenagers are getting driver's licenses in those days. We had to parallel park. I am more than a foot out from the curb. But if that happened now, you'd have to wait 2 more weeks and take it again. They let me take it over again, and I got within 6 inches of the curb, you know. And Tommy had the same problem. He had to take the parallel parking part. That was the hard part. Was the parallel parking.
So when you were in Atlanta, you know how to drive, and so you
Yeah.
saved your money and you bought a car.
Yeah, and it got used in a bank robbery, my first car. This is where having a top secret security clearance comes in handy. So they know I'm not part of the bank robbery. They have stolen my car, and they have taken it to rob a bank, and they couldn't get the safe open. And so they burned my car, and the safe actually protects the money, so they didn't even get the money. They did get the people, and they knew that I wasn't part
Right.
of it. And I haven't even had the car a month, so I'm getting my full value. And I go back to the same place and get a similar car, and it's funny, the first one was about the color of these walls. It was an Oldsmobile. The second one I get is black, and it is an Oldsmobile 98, very much like the Buick that I had learned to drive on. You know, what else would I buy? So this is the second thing I wanted to do before I settled down. Third thing, and the reason why I left Atlanta is I had registered to vote. In those days you had to register a whole year ahead of time. I had registered
Wow,
to
that's
vote.
interesting. I never knew that.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
Jimmy Carter was the one that made it
Changed
30
it, right?
days.
Wow.
Yeah, and you had to be 21. I was 22 by that time, or whatever. I was old, and I couldn't vote for Roosevelt. I was deeply sorry about that. But most of the people I knew must have been Republicans, because I surely thought Dewey was going to win, but I was going to vote for Truman so he wouldn't lose by too many. My stepfather, who had always been a Republican, he voted for Truman. And so
you're going to drive back from Atlanta to...
Dan, I have an adorable stepfather. He comes down and helps me drive back in my car from Atlanta. In the meantime, though, in the summer for vacation, I have taken 5 Georgia girls up north. We go to Williamsburg. We went to the University of Virginia, among other things. We go to Washington. We go all the way to New York City. And what we do is, because we can't really afford much of a hotel in New York City, even in those days, we go and and many of them had double beds in the room. We're sleeping 3 to a bed because we don't have the money to rent 2 rooms. And but one of the things my mother and stepfather did do, because they didn't have room to take 5 girls in either, This is why I was talking to you about finding me a place 5 could be taken in this summer. She's got a place. Anyhow, there was a tourist home not too far from where we lived, and so
Oh, wow.
they put them up there. Mother was willing. My mother's a good cook. She was willing to feed them,
Right.
but
There's
not
no
house
space.
them. So that worked out fine. So I come back up so I can vote for Truman, and then I get a job and start working. And fortunately, part of it is overtime, and I work all the overtime I can get because I am determined I'm going to go to Europe. And
This is before you've even met Carl, then?
yes,
Mhm.
I met him like 2 or 3 days after I got back.
Oh, no, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, what happened is this girlfriend, Winnie, her father was a lawyer and had died without leaving a will.
Now, how ironic is that?
Yeah. And so that she and her brother couldn't get any money. He was well-to-do. They gave her subsistence, but she couldn't get the bulk of the money. And finally, this was 10 years afterwards.
Wow.
And so then they released the money. So she's got the money to go, and I'm earning the money to go. And she had been in the speech and drama part of CU let people in the speech and drama. Nurses were first, then speech and drama, and then the School of Engineering and Architecture. Anyhow, so and I'm working overtime and doing an apartment, 2 kinds of apartments. One garden apartments in Cleveland and the other a high-rise in Cleveland. So it works out. And we take off, and for 3 months, $1,000 that I had saved up.
That's amazing.
Oh, and she got us a good deal. We actually got a 2nd-class cabin going over on the Independence because she's working for the Italian lines.
Oh, I see, right.
Right across the street. We're working like from here down to your street, that
Sure.
close to each other, so we can have lunch together every
That's
day.
wonderful.
Well, she knows nothing about Europe, and me, I think I know everything. And in your 20s, you think you know everything. But
Now, did that concern your parents that you were heading off, for 3 months without any definitive plans, or?
we had definitive plans. I bought a Eurail pass.
No, but I mean, as far as, I'm going to Europe for 3 months and I'll be back, and I mean, it didn't concern them that you were going
Oh, I had to tell them everywhere I was going, and that's one, like I said, I had an adorable stepfather. He had been to Europe several times,
Oh, okay.
and then actually spent some time and lived in Paris for a while. His French was, and he knew people for us. They knew people for us to visit and so forth. And so we landed in Naples and worked our way up to Scotland. But in Milan, there was this couple that we knew. Oh, in Rome even, my mother and stepfather were the guardians of their, the godparents of their son.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so they got us a place on the Via Veneto, and it was a neat place. That there was a pensione, but we only had to share there was 2 rooms, and we only had to share the bath with one other couple. So that was nice, and it was on a main drag, just inside the wall. And we, having gone to Catholic University, Monsignor MacDonald gave us an introduction for a private audience. I will have to tell you, the room was even longer than from here to your pergola,
Sure.
to your front porch, but it was kind of narrow. It was a long, narrow room.